Hey, welcome back, guys. Another episode of the NewOrleans.Football podcast. We got a great show for you guys today. We're going to talk about the latest with Sean Payton and where he might end up. Is Carolina actually an option? And should the Saints make that trade? The Saints decided to keep Pete Carmichael. What does the future hold there? And is there a path forward for the offense by sticking with more continuity? And we're also going to talk about the quarterback situation. Should the Saints draft one? Should they go after Derek Carr? What are the actual feasible options for this offseason? And so much more in today's show. We are coming to you from the Better Call BADEAUX podcast studio, and we are presented by Hardhide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey. That is an 86 proof blend of American light whiskey, 3-year-old wheat bourbon, and fresh Ponchatoula strawberries. It is not for the thin-skinned. Look for it in your favorite stores, bars, and restaurants. And if you need legal help with any of the following: 18-wheeler collisions, car wrecks, offshore injuries, Maritime Jones Act, hurricane and storm claims, you better call BADEAUX at 504-323-7777 or 985-303-7777 for your free consultation and case review, or visit BADEAUXlaw.com. And make sure you check out our friends, Firehouse Subs, Veteran Boulevard location. They got great food. Go in there. They'll get you fixed up, and you will not leave feeling hungry. And you know where else you won't feel hungry? Is after you watch the show. So let's get into it. All right, welcome back. Another episode of the NewOrleans.Football podcast. I'm here with my guy, Mike Triplett. A lot of stuff going on. A lot of momentum finally starting in the offseason. First thing first, NOLA.com just reported that Sean Payton's going to have a second interview with the Denver Broncos. He's supposed to meet with Carolina today, Monday. So there are two strong options right now for him heading into this process, the final leg, really, of the Sean Payton sweepstakes. Doesn't seem like Houston's going to be in it. DeMeco Ryans has started canceling some of his other interviews, so it seems like there's a lot of momentum for him to take that job in Houston. Arizona never really materialized. They kind of led a GM first search, and as they continue to hire more and more people, that doesn't seem to align with Sean Payton's philosophy of how he wants to run a team, to kind of be that centralized guy that everybody kind of falls in line around. So it seems like we got Denver and we got Carolina. Two good options, two very, very different options, though, when you look at where those teams kind of are right now. What are your thoughts?
Well, the thing that those two teams have in common are owners that are going to go after Sean Payton. I think I read that they're the two richest owners in the league, like the most billionaire of all the billionaires in David Tepper and then the Walton Penner group, and they seem aggressive. They seem like they want Sean Payton, and if Sean Payton wants a job and he wants to make a certain amount of money, and he, wants to have a team that's handing him the keys and all that, I think he's got two options. Now, he could wait. There could be better jobs next year. If he ever really wanted the Dallas Cowboys, it seems like we're one step closer to the Dallas Cowboys being opening. I don't think the Chargers will ever open for Sean Payton, but there might be better jobs for him next year. But if like we think, if Sean Payton really has a bug and is really ready to come back to coaching, and I don't know that Houston is completely dead to him, or maybe the interest mutually wasn't quite as strong there, because that's more of a complete rebuilding project. But he's got options. He's got options if he really wants to come back, and I think he's probably number one on both teams' list from what we can tell. So I'm hoping it happens this year. I've said that over and over again. I'm hoping for our content's sake that we're about to get some draft picks to write about, and just analyzing the Saints. I think it'd be way better for the Saints to get this done this year while the bidding is still high, while their demands can still be as high as possible, and just to keep this from hanging over the franchise for another year.
I do think that is good that there's two teams still involved. I think that's kind of important going into the final stanza, because if there isn't, one team removes and now the one team standing there saying, well, okay, but so take it or leave it. So you do need that other team in there to have some leverage. So I think that aspect of it is still good for the Saints. Where I think it gets difficult is, we've heard a lot from people tied to the team that they would be willing to trade Sean to a division rival. The price would just go up from there. But it's one thing to say it. It's one thing to actually execute that trade and have this guy living in your division. You got to face him 2 times a year. He's He's going to be there. And
all right, I'm putting you on the spot right now. I'm giving you the packages. Denver. Here's the problem with Denver is Denver seems kind of perfect. Ship him off to the AFC, where he might not win right away because he's in the most competitive division in football. You don't have to worry about Sean Payton as much winning a Super Bowl next year and throwing it in your face. But here's what Denver's offering you. They're offering you their 2/3 this year, which are really early thirds, their own and the Colts. I think they're top 5 third-round picks. And then next year you get their first and third. That's what you get from Denver.
So 3/3 and a first.
3/3 of first and some good thirds for whatever that's worth. 3/3 and a first from Denver. You could take Denver's first this year instead if you want. It might be 31st though because it belongs to the Niners. Carolina's giving you the 9th and a second next year. But you're sending him to the division. But you're getting that 9th pick this year.
If I'm a different GM, I probably take the Denver one because I think the optics of it matter as it pertains to my job security. I think that would matter a lot. Mickey is so secure in his position here that I don't think that he has the same pressure on him. I think that he's earned his stripes. He's kind of a little bit above that fray a little bit. So I would probably, if I'm Mickey, I probably take the Carolina one and I look at it like this. Look, I got to get my team better. At some point or another, if Sean succeeds, I'm going to have to deal with him if I succeed anyhow. So he's going to be out there. And at some point, your paths might cross anyhow. It would be hard, though, having him in the division. And if I'm the GM, though, like I'm just kind of answering that as Mickey.
Yeah.
If I'm the GM, I absolutely do not want to see this man twice a year. It's just, look, I might be able to beat him to the quarterback. And I think it is a serious race to the quarterback in this division. Every single team, now that Tom Brady probably is leaving. And even if Brady stays, that's short term, a year or two, and they need one. So it is a race to who gets the quarterback.
The whole division, you're exactly right.
And if you get 9, you have a shot at it. I don't know if one of those guys falls. Maybe you can move up to it, but you have a shot at it. The problem with Sean, and look, I do think that we give him a little bit too much credit as like a recruiter of quarterback talent and everything. That's kind of like a thought out there that like, well, if you get Sean, he can go get. He never did that here. He got an injured Breeze, and that was kind of it. But he does have a better recruiting pitch. And now let's say the Saints in Sean Payton Carolina version both approach Lamar Jackson. They give him similar packages. Where are you going? You're going with Sean every single time. So they are behind there. So getting that 9 pick might not put you ahead of them. And Sean probably does have a better chance of getting that quarterback.
I think if you get the 9 pick, the Saints are that much closer to drafting their quarterback. I don't know if they can get Will Levis. I actually just saw another mock draft today that had Will Levis going 9th, but I'll believe it when I see it. I feel like the top 3 quarterbacks go in the top 5. 9th might get you Anthony Richardson. Their opinion can be all over the map on Anthony Richardson. I don't know if my heart can take Twitter with Anthony Richardson as the Saints quarterback.
They don't want Will either because they saw him play Tennessee and the whole opinion of him is based on
I'll take Will
that.
Levis. Will Levis might end up going number 1 when this is all over. All the Josh Allen comparisons. But anyway, I don't know if that gets it done. But yeah, if Carolina trades you that 9th pick, absolutely, Sean Payton is getting paired with a veteran. That could be Garoppolo. It could be Tom Brady. We've seen that marriage talked about so much. It could be Lamar Jackson. It could be Derek Carr. But it's Sean Payton and a veteran quarterback. If Carolina trades away the 9th pick, I think
and Sean probably does.
So they're going to be built to win right away. If I'm the Saints, I'm even willing to give that up. I will let Sean have this year's title if I get to draft my rookie quarterback.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But you're right. You don't want to be behind him for a decade. It's scary. But yeah, you have to look at it myopically. You have to be like, how can we build the team we want to build? And if Carolina's got the picks, now I might have been shortchanging them. If I am Mickey, I think I can talk even tougher with Carolina and mean it, especially if I know I've got Denver as a fallback option. If it comes down to that, but maybe I'm telling him it's 2 firsts and 2 seconds. Frankly, I mean, because you're allowed to tell Carolina the rules are different for you. You really are.
Yeah, and the thing about Carolina though is that you probably aren't just losing Sean. You're probably losing Jeff Ireland too in that situation. Or at least there's a chance of it. He might go with them. So you're getting gutted a little bit there too. So
you have the rights to Jeff Ireland though, so you can make the price cost.
He's an
more.
assistant GM though. I mean,
I see what you're saying. To be the GM.
But yeah, I mean, you probably factor that in though, that the likelihood. And look, I think the Saints would probably have a pretty good idea if Jeff is actually tied in with him. They probably already know that already. So that becomes part of the asking price. You're right. The thing about getting the 9 though with Carolina and you get some of that other stuff, like you probably do have the ammunition to go up. Theoretically, somebody has to be willing to move, obviously, but if you get a 9 and a 2 when you got your 2, like you might be able to package your assets together this year to get your quarterback if you have to. You have future assets as well, and teams are going to look at the same situation and say, "Oh, well, like you're offering this year's first and next year's first to get 5." Like you're probably looking at it like that's a pretty good pick. So if they do actually want to move up to get this guy and they want somebody else in the top 10 to drop back 4 spots or 5 spots, you can probably actually do that and get your guy. So that would be the more advantageous situation if you have to get one of these 3 quarterbacks. It might be CJ Stroud that ends up going third actually overall. Like opinions in the scouting community are that it's Alabama, it's Kentucky, and then it's Ohio State as far as you rank in the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
The question is that Levis has so much boom or bust with him. I think that also depends on how comfortable some of these GMs feel in their job. Because if you miss on him, you might lose your job, and he might absolutely end up missing. Whereas Stroud is a kind of a safer pick, but it doesn't maybe have as much upside when you kind of project everything.
The problem with mock drafts too is they have to just try to guess how the teams in those current slots are going to operate, and they try to guess. Everybody gives the Texans 1 at 2. Everybody gives the Colts 1 at 4. But somebody's going to love whichever of the quarterbacks doesn't go 2 and 4, and they're going to trade up. So that the sky's the limit. Somebody's going to love Levis. Somebody's going to love Young. Somebody's going to love Stroud. And I think they're all going in the top 5. I really do.
All right. Here's one other fan theory that's kind of out there. Since we're talking about young quarterbacks, would you trust this coaching staff with a rookie quarterback?
Sure. Yeah. Like, and that'll go into Pete. I mean, we got to go into Pete Carmichael right now because it's tied to that question. I think we all expect, this is the first time we had a members only pod where we talked about the move. But you know, and we each wrote about it on the website. So I hope subscribers check that out. But if non-subscribers are listening and hearing our thoughts for the first time, we both think the offense was unacceptable last year. We've said it for months, how much better it needs to be. We both expected probably Pete Carmichael to be fired. We both thought that was probably the right move, mostly because I think they needed to have a new voice and a new approach in the building. But now that they've decided to keep Pete Carmichael.
Let me interject real quick. Just to add to that point. We wrote a story doing like a 10-year study of their 2nd and 10 calls to look at how those all changed. We looked at how Alvin Kamara has been used at wide receiver throughout his career to show how much that's fallen off. We did a 5-year study of motion across the NFL to show how far down the Saints offense fell in that and how off trend they were. We did a study looking at how they called the play, the slant to Callaway for 5 years and how it was reversed the whole entire time. So when the quarterback dropped back, he could throw the pass across his body on the slant. And every single time they had called it, it was run flipped. On that instance, it was flipped the other way. So it essentially looked like it was called backward. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe that was by design. But we showed you how that play failed and why. Like our details on why the coaching staff failed was far beyond just us screaming about an opinion. Like when you're out there talking about some of the stuff, like we built the gun that you're using to shoot at them.
I know. I mean, people were yelling back at me, but look what they did on 2nd and 10. And they're like, yeah, where did you read that? Where did you read that? No, look, and
after the last game, we wrote a story about how they needed to change things.
The offense is broken was the column written heading into the offseason, which we completely agree on. And I made the mistake.
We would have hired somebody else at OC, but they didn't, and this is reality going forward.
I made the mistake of defending Pete Carmichael in one area after like 6 hours of being like, all right, I just can't take it anymore, which is never the right move. But we completely agree that, and I think it's actually a 3-year trend. Ever since Drew Brees kind of got hurt in 2018 is when the trend started that this offense couldn't find another answer. So change is needed, change was needed. But the takes that got to me were Pete Carmichael was never valuable to this organization in any way. Yeah, sure, he called the plays in 2011 and 2012 and 2016, but he was really just getting coffee for Sean Payton. Like those are the ones that finally got to me, and I'm like, don't diminish everything the guy did for 17 years as the offensive coordinator of one of the probably top 3 offenses in NFL history. He's valuable. He's smart. And if he would have got hired by another team of the 14 teams out there hiring offensive coordinators, that wouldn't have surprised me one bit.
Let me put this more bluntly for you.
Well, what I was going to say is he's not an incompetent person. So now that we know they're keeping him and he knows completely. He is as aware as anyone that they need to rip pages out, start from scratch. Dennis Allen is going to demand that. That's why we thought they were going to make a change. We know they're not happy with the offense. Do I think Pete Carmichael is incapable of revamping this offense and teaching a young quarterback, which was what the question? No, I think he's a valuable person to have in the building. They need new ideas. I hope they hire and add to this coaching staff. But no, they're not going to ruin the next quarterback because they have an incompetent person in the building. I don't believe that.
Yeah, look, it would be fake of me to say that I don't have significant doubts about the offense. Like, the offense drove me nuts. Like, I hated the offense. I hated pretty much everything they did. I did think a little bit towards the end of the season, they started to find some creativity, and it felt like, oh, wait, this like Wildcat package is like actually something that can be a valuable part of their offense. It felt like they started to figure some things out. But look, I think that everything in the world is just so extreme right now. Yeah. Like you look at I think Dak Prescott's like a very good comparison. It's either he can win a Super Bowl or he sucks completely. And it's just like, no, like you can exist in the middle and you could probably win a Super Bowl with Dak, but like you aren't right now because he isn't good enough. But like Jared Goff got to a Super Bowl. You can get to a Super Bowl with Dak Prescott. Like, let's not be outrageous with like every single take.
Jared
in the
Goff's
world.
like one of the only 3 quarterbacks in the NFL right now with a favorable opinion of him right now because of how he just finished his season with Detroit.
But look, Pete did a bad job.
Yeah.
Straight up, I thought he did a bad job. I would have replaced him if I was DA.
Yes.
Is there a reality where maybe he figures everything out? Look, I'll leave the door open. Prove me wrong. I'm not. Right. I don't think enough of myself to think that my opinion right now is exactly what's going to happen. So I think you made the wrong decision, but I'll allow for the possibility of me being wrong. And like the door's open on that right now. So we'll kind of see where that goes from there. But yeah, they got to be way, way better. And here's the reality of the situation. And then I'm going to answer my own question too. DA bet his career on Pete Carmichael, basically. So if Pete Carmichael fails, DA doesn't have a job. So that's the bet he's made. And that's just the reality of the situation right now. So if he thinks he can fix it, okay, go fix it. Now that's on you. Figure it out. That's kind of where the team's at right now. B, I think it's just stupid to say you shouldn't try to draft a quarterback. The whole world, again, going to the extreme opinions, thought Zach Taylor was a moron. They thought he was the worst coach in the NFL. They thought that he didn't deserve that job. He should have been fired. He was in over his head. They drafted a quarterback and it worked. So, I mean, you still have to try. And then look, if you draft them and you think the staff is incompetent and they're failing the young quarterback that you're possibly drafting in the top 10 with Carolina's pick, you fire the coaching staff and you start over. So I don't think it's a thing where it's like, well, they can't try because this guy sucks and I think he sucks. Like, no, you try. And if it fails, you fix it. And that's kind of where they're at right now. But again, I would have made a different decision. But they didn't. And so now we evaluate it going forward.
Here's the important thing, though. Look, it's hard to defend Pete Carmichael right now, and I won't. Like, there were signs. The fact that it has been 3 years, even when Sean Payton was here for 2 of those years, the writing has been on the wall long enough that change should have been sparked sooner. But I think all the anger and all the vitriol is, does keeping Pete Carmichael mean the Saints think everything is fine? That I understand would have everyone ready to burn the building down. As long as they recognize that everything is not fine and that they need radical change and improvement on their offense, which I think they do from talking to sources and from hearing things on and off the record all year long. I am well aware that they're not happy with the performance of their offense. So there's 2 different conversations. One is Pete Carmichael capable of being part of the solution and doing better? Time will tell. Are the Saints telling us we think our offense is great? No, they are not. That is the one part I am confident in. They also are aware that improving their offense is probably, and the quarterback position and the play from that position is probably number 1 on their priority list. Just because they didn't fire a guy doesn't mean they aren't aware how important that is. That doesn't mean they'll get it right, though.
I got my own personal theory on what I think maybe possibly happened with this.
I know what you're going to say, and I agree with it.
So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a bad job. First of all, that OC job it's a bad job. You're coming into a situation where there's
13 others available right now.
And the coach might get, he's on the hot seat going into the season. If they start 0-4, 1-5, like he's probably out of there. So if you're somebody evaluating your options and you're somebody else with other options, you are not taking this option because you're tying in with the coach that's on the hot seat and there's no quarterback. Like, what are you building on right here? So if you go out there, you have to look for somebody that's kind of desperate or someone that's looking for a break that's been overlooked a little bit. And that person is going to be a complete and absolute gamble in that situation. So now looking back at DA, I think if you're a guy that's in that situation and you're on the hot seat, do you bet on a complete unknown, and if they bust, you're out? Or do you look at the guy and say, all right, can we fix this? And then you evaluate it through there, and you kind of look at him and, okay, he went with the safer choice, probably, I think is the way to put it. But I do not believe that they went into this and they didn't make calls, that they didn't explore the market. I have pretty good reason to believe that there was some exploring of the market. I could have received bad whispers. There's whispers out there about stuff, and sometimes it isn't true or it isn't. But it wouldn't make sense for them not to be looking at the market at all. But I think it's a bad job, and they probably didn't feel like they could upgrade.
I know for a fact. Yeah, I don't know how many phone calls or whether offers were made or whether interviews were lined up, but I know for a fact that during this 2 weeks of evaluation period that started with Dennis Allen talking with Mickey Loomis and then bringing the staff back in and doing evaluations and stuff, this was number one on the agenda. I mean, this wasn't like the next time we interview DA, did you consider replacing Pete Carmichael? No, not for a second. What, like, maybe I'll say that, but yeah, like, this isn't one of those, no, we never considered changing the offensive coordinator. You're crazy. They considered it. They looked at, they discussed at length and considered what is the right approach here. They are well aware that this is the number one alarms are going off, have to fix part of their team tied to the quarterback position as well. And I mean, they see it too. We just disagree on what their approach is for fixing it. Now, they did make one change, firing Dan Roshar, who is tight ends coach and the run game coordinator. I don't know if that means they've got an opening for run game coordinator or if Doug Marrone slides into that role and they've got an opening for whatever on their staff. But I'd like to see that they add to the staff as well. It's going to be a lot harder said than done when you're not even offering the offensive coordinator position, though.
I feel bad for Dan. It kind of feels like a little bit like a sacrificial lamb. Something has to change a little bit. I had heard early in the season that there were maybe differing philosophies between him and some other people on the staff on, how to block and go about the run game and all that stuff. And maybe that came to a head at some point, and, it was one direction or the other, and they decided to let him go. I hate it for him. It just feels, it feels like somebody was kind of, well, here's the fall guy, but it probably wasn't that, but that's the optics of it. And I don't like it for him. Good guy, good coach, well-respected, all that stuff. Will probably land on his feet. I hope he does. It does open up an opportunity, though, and something that I think is very important for this team. If Pete Carmichael is your offensive coordinator, you need somebody that can start screaming and busting heads when things are wrong at practice. And I think they used to have that in very strong doses. Obviously, and Dan Campbell was somebody who kind of filled that role behind Peyton. Obviously, you had Peyton himself doing that. I don't know if he needed backup dancers, but he had some. Campbell was one. Curtis Johnson used to be a guy, too, that used to really get on people. And he was somebody that had enough respect in the locker room that he could walk up and, to an Alvin Kamara and be like, come on, man, what are you doing in pass protection? Are you giving it everything? What are you doing here? Like, why is this falling off? Like, and people respected him. He had that cachet. I don't think they have that at all on offense.
Doug Marrone does have a little of that. Like, if he wasn't already part of the staff, he feels like sort of that natural compliment. That
maybe to his guys, but I don't know if he's crossing lines.
I don't know if he crosses. I mean, he used to be an offensive coordinator. He used to be a head coach, 2 different teams.
Well, if he was that guy, clearly it wasn't enough.
No, but what I'm saying, I wonder if there's an empowering that could happen, and I wonder if, like, he seems like a natural guy to be named their run game coordinator, and I don't know what that means.
I'm talking more about like the cop, like the bad cop of the staff.
But that's what I'm saying. I wonder if they could empower him to be some of that, because that seems like the kind of guy you're describing that the building needs. But yeah, I agree. I would like it to be an innovator. Like, I mentioned this a few times when we were saying, well, maybe if they don't fire Pete Carmichael, maybe what they need to do is, as LSU's version of bringing Joe Brady into the mix a few years ago when they didn't fire Steve Ensminger, it'd be nice to know that there are new ideas that are going to come to this building. The thing I do know from talking to sources and stuff, though, is they believe, hey, this was a year 1 coaching staff. It's possible to get better, to learn from mistakes and improve. I know everybody thinks it was a year 22 coaching staff, or a year 18 coaching staff, but in a lot of ways they look at themselves as a year 1 coaching staff and believe that you can get better without just firing everybody. We give players that benefit of the doubt or something. It's hard to give that benefit of the doubt because I think they all knew what the stakes were. This wasn't Pete Carmichael's first rodeo. It wasn't Dennis Allen's first rodeo. We wanted to see them hit the ground running a little more, but a lot of times we think somebody will do better in their second year after, a year of learning what worked and what didn't. That's what they're really betting on, is that they can learn from this year and do better the second time around. Time will tell. They've lost a lot of benefit of the doubt.
Whoever this tight ends coach is, though, like I really do think that it needs to be someone that like you walk in a room and they command the room. Like Doug Marrone doesn't. He has a presence, but he's not Dan Campbell. Ryan Nielsen walks in a room and like Ryan Nielsen's in a room, and when he says something, I gotta listen because this dude has a crazy presence. They gotta have that. I think DA needed that on defense too. Like I think he has some guys with that because DA doesn't really have that necessarily type of personality either. So I think that's an important hire. Like they got to get someone that brings a little bit of that like to the staff a little bit. It can't be a Carmichael type. Like it has to be someone that's and Dan was kind of not. He was a nice guy. Like you need someone that's kind of an asshole a little bit. I think to have that position. Last thing, Jeremy Fowler had a report, a speculation, a gossip that he heard from. Basically, it was worded that other teams around the league expect the Saints, the Jets, and the Commanders to be among the teams that make calls.
Yeah, that was pretty soft.
It's not a report.
Other teams expect the Saints to get in the mix. It wasn't the Saints.
It's not a report. Yeah, it was kind of like then taken from his video. Like he didn't present it as a report either, but then other places hear it, they report it as like a fact. Saints have interest in Derek Carr. We don't know that they do. It would make a lot of sense that they would have interest. Yeah. It would probably be absurd if they didn't make a single call
you gotta
on
make
him.
A call.
Yeah, you got to know the market.
Here's what you have to find out from the Raiders. You have to find out, all right, you're trading Derek Carr, who is due like $80 million over the next 2 years, and we got to guarantee that as soon as the trade gets made. How much are you paying for?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that's what that first phone call is. Are you paying for 60 of the 80 million so that we can give you a good pick? If the Raiders are not picking up any of the bill, there will be no trade. There will be a cut, and Derek Carr will be a free agent. So, yeah, of course you call to the Raiders and be like, all right, how sweet is this offer? We give you a 6th rounder, you pay half the salary, or you're looking for a 2nd rounder and you're only paying $10 million, then you hang up the phone. So you make that call because if you somehow get a sweet deal, then you got to consider Derek Carr. If you have to pay him full price and pay a 2nd round pick, then you don't even consider it. And so just like we said, the all or nothing views of Dak Prescott, my views of Derek Carr is he's better than what they have, but I'm not giving up my entire franchise and all my assets for him.
Yeah. I think it's a 3-pronged approach. I think the Raiders got to eat some of it. I think Carr's got to take a little bit of a pay cut, and then you maybe give him your 2nd round pick. If those two things happen, if those two things don't happen, I don't think I make that. I don't think I make the trade. Like I'm not paying him this much, and how much are they eating? So, all right, Derek, you take $10 million off. Raiders, you pay $10 million of this somehow, but restructure his contract, add a $10 million sign bonus, whatever you got to do.
Yeah.
I'm not paying all this, and you basically got to buy the 2nd. It's kind of like the Roby trade. Like they ended up giving a 3rd because they ate some on the market. He's probably worth like a 4th or a 5th. It's very, very, very similar situations. But yeah, I would make the trade if those things happen because you don't have a quarterback.
Yeah. Well,
you are a starving. You are a starving team.
You don't make your decision on Derek Carr until you find out what you get from Sean Payton too, because that'll affect the plan. But
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Look, if they got 29 though, I would probably trade for Carr and still try to maybe draft a quarterback late in the 1st round and have him behind him, start developing him. Like you got to attack this position every single which way you can, and this is why there were so many stories starting in like 2015 that I wrote. Like, start looking for your quarterback. You got to get him. You got to find him. You cannot be passive in this approach. He's an option though. And look, I know like he's not a guy that he's not Mahomes. He's not Joe Burrow, who another conversation. I think he might be like the number 2 quarterback in the league right now. I'm putting him ahead of Herbert and he wins more than Josh Allen, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I mean, he's not one of those guys, but he is in that tier with Kirk Cousins that I think if everything's perfect around him, you can get to the Super Bowl. And look, that's not the greatest place to live, but it's much better than living in poverty as well.
No, look, it's everything. It's everything. And I wish I could lay it out and say this is absolutely what the Saints should do. I think about this a lot, and I don't know what the right answer is. I know you need it. It's funny. I just heard someone say today, would you get rid of Mike McCarthy or would you get rid of Dak Prescott? And if you get rid of Mike McCarthy, you know you have a million options at coach, including Sean Payton. If you get rid of Dak Prescott, you've got no options. We're living this as covering the Saints. Getting the quarterback, hating your current quarterback situation, that's easy. Deciding what's your way out of it is a lot harder. I don't know what the most obvious path to quarterback success is. I know we can poo-poo a lot of them. I know we can say, well, don't do that. Well, don't do that. Well, don't do that. But what is the obviously do this? I don't know what it is right now. I'd like for the Bears to be offering Justin Fields in a trade. That would be exciting. I want the guy to be young and almost a sure thing. That's easy, right?
Yeah, and that's not going to happen. Yeah, the thing, it's easy to say, oh, well, they should tank, or they should go get Lamar Jackson, or they should do this, or they should do that. The reality is okay, what can you do within the options that are actually presented to you? And then if you turn your nose up at Derek Carr now, you might not have another even decent option for like 6-7 years, or you might draft somebody and he turns out to be a bust. But look, what we do know is they aren't going to tank. Like, that's not going to happen. And if they do tank, the coaching staff is going to try to win games because they're going to be on their way out and they want to preserve their jobs and they want to have the integrity of saying, well, look, I still tried to win and I'm going to go somewhere else. Like, Lovie Smith can walk away with a lot of money in his pocket and his head held high, and he might have an option to coach somewhere again because he just didn't fold. And somebody out there is going to like, oh, I like this guy's attitude. He kept going for it. You know, the game's more important than anything to him. So you can't just fold. So yeah, whatever they can actually do in reality, I'm open to, and I think you have to try to do it. You know, I just don't think that not trying is an option.
Right, but I'm not paying full price for Derek Carr.
No,
either.
not
but I am making the call.
You know what you should pay full price for is NewOrleans.Football, $9 a month. Support what we do. You get an extra podcast every week. All of our analysis. The offseason's starting to get really, really, really kind of interesting right now. So check us out. Get on there, and appreciate the support that everybody's already in. We'll be back with the members only end of the week on Thursday, and talk to you soon.